I've had my rather wonderful Triton router, an MOF001 router. I've had this for over a year, maybe 18 months now, and absolutely love it. And I've got lots of good results from it. But I've tended not to use it freehand. I've always, where possible, used a template. I'm trying to think of times where I haven't had it guided in some way. I've used it on my homemade router table. Nearly always the work is guided over the top of the router bit. I've used it with a variety of templates, and up until now the templates I've used have always been designed for router bits with bearings on them. So the templates have either been what I'd maybe call a form template, where you're trimming it to the size of the template, and I've done that freehand around the top using the bearing on the bit, and I've also done it on the router table, moving the work around over the top of the bit, again guided with a bearing, either the bearing on the top with the template over the top, or the bearing on the bottom with the template underneath. And I've also used a form of template which is for routing cavities, where you're usually freehand working around inside the template to create a cavity of a specific size in a specific position with the template fixed to the work. Now that's all very well, but what happens when you have a bit that doesn't have a bearing? This is where the guide bush comes in, and I've got this template kit which I've had for over 6 months, and I've never even opened it because I just haven't had the opportunity to use it yet. But I've got to create a template for routing out a truss rod cavity on a guitar neck, and I'm not going to be touching the guitar neck today, but I'm going to make a template for using the router, and I'll test the template out, make sure it produces good results before I use it on the guitar neck. And this is the perfect occasion to use my guide bushings. Template guides, because the router bit I'm going to use is the exact width of the cavity that I need to cut. So I'm just going to be basically cutting a straight line and using the guide bush to do that. So great opportunity. Let's get this thing open and see what's in there. I hope everything's present and correct, because this is the first time I've opened it. If there's anything missing, then that's rather unfortunate. Okay. We have plates, we have bushes, we have screws to secure them, and I guess that goes over the top. Ooh, okay. Might have to have a look at some instructions. Ah, does that go in there? And then I would imagine that's supposed to stick prominent. I'm going to perhaps read some instructions, if there are any instructions in here. Yes, there are. Ah, and that answers another question. There is a base plate. Ah, this I think is for a router table. I'm guessing the existing base plate on the router I still use, but let me go away and read some instructions, and we'll see what we've got here. Right, here's what I found out. This plate is for the bigger TRA-001 router, so we don't need this. This is the plate for this, and I believe it clips in underneath this existing plate. We will find out in a minute. And I also believe from the instructions you can leave this in place, permanently attached, underneath this sole plate here. This plastic attachment is a router table spacer, if you're going to be using this on a router table, and I believe this insert is a Porter cable adapter. Presumably those guide bushes have a particular size, and this is an adapter which drops them down to that size, I guess, and probably fits over the top of them, and they fit between there and there, maybe, I don't know. But I don't have any of those guide bushes to try this, and I'm not going to be using it on the router table, so we don't need that either. So this is what we need. Let's see how it fits. And I'll use the slot head on this. Hopefully I won't lose the screws through the holes in the top of my bench. I have a whole load of stuff on the shelf below the bench, and I hate it when stuff drops through the holes in the top of the bench and gets lost in amongst all the junk underneath. Right, I believe there is a notch there, and I think that just slots in. As you can imagine, it's a tight fit. There we go. And then we place that back on again. I think it is that simple, as long as we get the plate orientated right. There. And that is very firm. So far, so good. Something that I don't think was explained particularly well in the instructions. This is an alignment bush. We were supposed to have mounted this on the base plate. The idea of this is you have the screws in the base loose, and then you can just slot it between the screws, and then you rotate. This is true of the guide bushes as well as this alignment bush, and then we can mount that firmly in the base plate by tightening the screws. But what we were supposed to have done, with the base plate loose, we were supposed to have had this fully plunged, so that the collet is now straight through the middle of the alignment bush, and it is a very snug fit. That ensures that this base plate is centered, because there is play in these screws, so it is possible to get this plate very slightly off center. And if you've got a very snug fitting bush, that's not a good idea, and I can't believe I've just said that. So we screw the base plate on tightly. It says to not over tighten for fear of distorting the base plate. We now know that that is centered, not censored, and we can loosen the alignment bush and remove it, and then we can put the guide bush in its place. We can't now, of course, plunge, and we've got to put the bit in there, but that is how you mount the plate. And it is in the instructions, but it wasn't immediately obvious what they meant by mounting the alignment bush before you put the plate on. But that's how you do it. Right, let's go and make ourselves a template. One point I want to make before I go make my template, because it annoys me, is that these bushes are all measured in imperial. They're all really weird widths. This one, the outer diameter is 7/16, and this one is 3/8, and the internal diameters are measured in 32nds, which I can't get my head around these measurements. That measures about 11.1 millimeters, and that is 9.4, I think, something like that. Which means I don't have any drills that are this diameter. So in terms of making the end points on the template, I guess I'm going to have to use this one with an 11mm drill if I've got one, and should have an 11mm drill, I think, and then just slightly widen it I just find that really annoying. Why can't we have metric? It's just so much easier. Why can't that be 11 millimeters and that one be 9 or 10 millimeters, with the internal diameters being sensible numbers of millimeters, you know, 2 millimeters. So if that's 11, the internal will be 9, and if that's 9, the internal would be 7. You know, it's something like that. It's, why do we live in a world where people want to leave Europe? I don't know. Oh, political. No, mustn't get political. Right, let's get on with the template, and hopefully it'll all work properly. Some things to consider in measurements before we go and route our template out. The truss rod, I want a channel that's 344 millimeters long, and I want to leave the rounded edges of the channel just touching the ends of the final channel, and then square the channel. I don't want to cut past and leave the ends rounded with a very small half moon gap at either end, which I could do for speed, but I want to take the time and get this fitting snugly. So I'm going to leave the rounded ends wholly within inside the final channel, and then square them. So in other words, I will be stopping half a bit's width short at each end, which means that the length of travel of the bit, and hence the length of travel in the template, will be 338 millimeters. The bit's 5.7 millimeters. Let's call it 6 millimeters. So I'm going to be cutting 338 millimeters total travel. I'm going to use a 1/2 inch router bit to cut this out, and I'm not going to use a drill to drill a pilot hole. I'm going to use this like a drill. Hopefully it will work, and just go straight through the middle of this and then route that out. The reason I'm using a 1/2 mil, I've gone up to plate number D, which is half an inch. Did I just say 1/2 mil? This is half an inch in diameter, 12.8 millimeters, which should be what this is. That's a little bit smaller. 12.8 millimeters is a little bit bigger than 1/2 inch, but that's meant to be 1/2 inch. So hopefully this doesn't come out too snug. Yeah, I don't have a drill that is 11 millimeters wide, so and my 12 millimeter drill won't be suitable for this. So 1/2 inch bit, and I'll just try and push it straight through the work and then route the channel out. Oh well. That took quite a bit of setup. I had to plane the edges of these lumps of mahogany so that I could get them dead straight, so this would slide smoothly. Also, I can't use end stops because my router table isn't long enough. I'd need to have the end stop out here. So I've just got to just carefully eyeball the line against the reference line here, which is the centre of the bit, or should be the centre of the bit. Actually, it's not critical if it's not the centre of the bit. It's a reference line, and I'm just going to be moving it backwards and forwards. Well, you see I overshot there. I've got to be a bit careful here, but we're there. So we're ready to go. So let's just I need to get the height set, and yeah, let's go. I'll do what amounts to be a test pass first, which is just a couple of millimeters, just to make sure we've got the height right, and just lock that off, and away we go. That should be the right length. It's a total of 350 long, so that's 338 plus the 12 millimeters width. So that's good. Let's go. Oh, in fact, I'll just get the guide bush just to make sure that fits. That's a very tight squeeze. Yeah. Here's what I think is fair criticism of the product. They say this is a 1/2 inch, but it's actually 12.84, 12.8, and the consequence of that is it will barely fit in the slot. In fact, up this end where there's no flex available, oh, it will go in just about, but that's just so tight. That's just, it just locks in. There's no way that's going to slide easily. So I guess I'm going to have to somehow just sand the edge just to widen it slightly. That is not a 1/2 inch router. That is a 1/2 inch hole. That is 12.65, which is perfect. Oh well. Oh. Rubbing the skin off. No. Still not enough, but it is a little bit looser. Yeah. Ooh, nearly. Nearly there. I suspect it's only loose in the middle because of it will expand. Yeah, we're still going to take a bit off. Time for my brand new Iwasaki rasp. It's very snug at the end, but I guess that's okay. This is the part I struggle with. There we go. I put that into its fullest extent. I hope, I'm wondering whether that's extended enough, but we'll see. So we need the adjustment bush in there. Tighten that down. Oh, that's clever. It popped off the base plate, not surprisingly. It's quite a snug fit on the base plate, but you've got to bear in mind that it is only just pressed in and then held in place by the screws. It's all very close tolerances. So let's try that again. There we go. Take the adjustment bush out. Put the guide bush in. Yeah, I need this could be interesting. I need that to come out a lot further. you're not really supposed to... Is there a depth on this? There isn't a depth mark on it, but you shouldn't have router bits protruding too much because they become unstable. There's usually a mark on the router bit as to how far in you're supposed to have it. Don't know whether that's a bit proud, I don't know, but it's got to protrude a fair bit through the bush. That should be alright, I think. What do I want about that? I do of course have this router unplugged. Something to bear in mind when purchasing router bits is I've got the depth set, so I think the collet is still proud of the... I don't think the collet is touching the guide. That seems to be clear. And the router bit is deep enough. Oh yes, so now of course you've got to measure below the level of the template, and yeah, it is only just deep enough, but it is deep enough. Of course that's ignoring the width of your double-sided sticky tape or the masking tape that you're going to use to secure the template onto the work. Right, so let's try that. That's the perfect length after we square the ends, which I'm not going to do now because this is, after all, the test. This is not a guitar neck, just in case you wondered, and it's the perfect depth, so I am very happy with that. Yeah, that's something to consider actually. That is too wide for the channel, so if you're trying to thread this in at the end, you have to widen that end. That's I don't think that's very good personally, but oh well, that's something I'll have to come to. I'll just have to take a chisel to the end of it just to widen the very end, so I can just, because anyway, I don't need to explain truss rods to you. Just know that that is the perfect depth channel and perfect width and perfect length. Very happy. One functional template. Well, that all went remarkably well, really. I now have a reusable template for routing out for truss rods on my acoustic guitars. This is an acoustic truss rod. Worked really well. I guess the take-home point from the video is remember to use the alignment bush around the collet to make sure the plate is centered properly, and bear in mind that these are metric bushes and they are a little bit bigger than they say they are, which is annoying. Even if I had something like a 13mm bit, that would have been too big. It's just that annoying size where you're having to sand away, and I stripped a bit of skin off, and but we got there. Just bear that in mind when you use these bushes. So yeah, if you found this useful, or even if you didn't, click like, subscribe, share the video, comment, do all the usual things, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye!